Good morning, everyone, on this soothing morning. This is April 27th. Where are we today? We're in Japan. And I believe this is pre-recorded, so I don't exactly know, but I believe we're having a great trip. So this, like the other recordings we've gone through, and by the way, soothing's a white tea. And so we're starting a new series here. And so it's soothing this week and headliner next week. And so you're going to get a sense of white tea, which is different from Fuding or Zhenghe or Jianyang, any of the Fujian province white teas. And instead, you're going to get a Yunnan white tea experience. And in some ways, it's going to surprise you. Yes and no. The surprise will be size, but from a, and there'll be also a flavor surprise in both instances. It will be truly heightened in the headliner instance, but you'll get a sense of it in soothing. So that's where we are. These sessions, since they're pre-recorded, we're only going to go through and demonstrate and have you brew along with us at the same time. Take notes, save those notes, and any questions you have, when we come back, we'll answer those questions. Happy to spend the time to go through that. If it's a really big question, you can actually send it to us now. And I'm talking about April 27th, because we're actually in a place where I think we'll be able to receive it, and then I can spend some time answering. Okay, let's jump right into soothing. Soothing is southern Yunnan Province. When you think of Yunnan Province, you think of Kunming as kind of in the center, Ilau Mountains, a little south, but still central, kind of central. And then when you think of some of the most famous, and I'm talking about well-known rather than any other implied meaning by famous, some of the most well-known poor and old tree locations, Labanjiang, Nanua, Jingmai, there's about 13 or 14, Hekai, whole bunch of them in this area. Xishuangbanna is not so far away from Menghai, which is the central processing area for most of the pu'er that's produced in southern Yunnan Province. Produces a huge amount, and we're talking about in excess of 20,000 tons of pu'er annually. However, we're not going to take you to the factory today. We're actually going to take you to farmers who are producing this tea. And so you get a different feel. And again, it's white tea. Normally, tea from this part of Yunnan always goes to either fermented and occasionally goes to red tea. Rarely do you see white tea made from this type of source material. We were lucky to score this, and part of this was a result of an experiment we had done a few years earlier when we collaborated with farmers both in Yunnan and Fuding to produce some initial white tea called Otherworldly. And those of you who've had Otherworldly will remember the way that turned out. So the soothing today will be a taste difference, but you'll recognize, again, some of the characteristics of the fact that it's from Yunnan. Yunnan, this far south, the terroir is subtropical. It's humid most of the year, never really gets cold during this time of year. or during the year. And naturally living in this habitat are elephants, wild elephants. So this is a really interesting place to visit. And it's really interesting when you go out to the farms. It's hard to find every single farm. If you are not native to this area, you gotta have somebody who is native to help get you to these farms, because they're in the hills. You gotta know, oh, turn right 8 steps after you see the black chicken crossing the road. I mean, there is all these sets of instructions, and just very complicated to get down to the farms. But once you get down to the farms, what about the cultural terroir? These people are warm. They're excited to have interest in the West in their teas. They take you out to the old trees. They also will let you watch the process. If you wanted to, they'd even let you try your hand at the process. I never want to do that anymore because I already know I'm just not good enough, and I don't want to waste the valuable tea. What is the other part of this cultural terroir that's really important to understand? In Yunnan, almost all of the best major producers know each other. And I don't mean that they've seen, oh, your picture's in the magazine, oh, I recognize you. No, they visit, because there's this sense not of competition, it's more like pride. I come to your farm, I must show off and show you what my product is and show you how good it is. And look, my source material is incredible. And so you get that type of cooperation. These producers also cooperate very closely with the largest producers out of Munghai. Munghai is, again, this smallish town that's, when you descend the mountains, you descend into Munghai. And really, Munghai is all about tea. It's all about the production of tea. Several large producers. And these guys, because they're smart, the heads of these factories, they go up and visit regularly all these very famous farmers. Why? Because every time they go, the farmers know them, they know the farmers. They can ask these intimate questions about, well, what's happened this year that's different than last year? What's the trend? And they can get real answers. And the farmers like having these producers as friends, because the producers will sometimes put in enormous orders. And the orders aren't all for the public market. Some of them are personal orders. They know what's really great. Some of them are for blends. That's, by the way, why some farmers from other areas will come to this area, because they're looking to experiment with blends. And so it's not blend in the way that Celestial Offerings blends things. We're not talking about that type of blend, where you use your imagination, you go to the essential oil rack, oh yeah, I love that smell, and then somehow you incorporate it into a tea. You pick some fancy name. That's Western blend. What I mean here is they'll take tea and make special cakes that are blended cakes and compress the tea together. And again, you have to know these people to come across this stuff, because it's really not a pervasive practice insofar as going to the consumer market. Because the consumer market, just like here, it wants to recognize things. Oh yeah, this has the title Lao Banjiang on it. I'm going to buy it regardless, because it's got that title. If they saw a cake which said, oh, this has Lao Banjiang and this has Bingdao, couple trees put in here, the consuming market, whether it's in China or here, would have a hard time understanding. We, as people in the tea business, long time in the tea business, would look at that and have some questions about them. But at this level, these producers who do this have 30, 40, 50 years in the business. So when they do these combinations, they're looking explicitly for certain results. And they know how to do that stuff. And that is, by the way, what convinced me that, you know, I got a creative mind, but I am not in their league when it comes to creating blends of teas. I just can't do it in the way that they can. So I've given up. And I gave up early once I understood, hey, this guy's got 40 years of doing this. And he knows what's available out there, or she knows what's worked and hasn't worked in the past. So there's a big difference. But coming together of all this talent provides great opportunities for us. Whenever we're in Manghai, we usually have the opportunity to go to dinner with 10, 12, 15 of these guys. And when you think of the amount of experience sitting at the table, sometimes you get 500 or 600 years worth of accumulated experience. And it's really interesting to hear the stories of the evolution, to hear the successes, to laugh over the ridiculous failures. It's a book that you just can't put down. It's one of those types of experiences. And usually by the time we're in Manghai, we're so exhausted, because usually we come down to Manghai after being in the mountains, that the only thing we're usually really thinking about, let's eat a quick dinner and let's retire for the night. And then we get at the table with everybody and we get re-energized because the stories are so funny and interesting. You have people at these dinners who, before China opened up, worked at the tea factories. And tea cakes that go for hundreds or more dollars at that time went for just a few cents because there wasn't that much demand. Demand was localized and hadn't really been exposed to the whole market. Remember, when you think of the pu'er tea, you think of the old tea horse road. So you have tea that's getting horsed out of there. It takes a long time to wherever it's going. And there's limitations on how much can get out, right? And it's only in relatively recent times that we've had much more ability to see into these areas and to figure out what's available, to have others comment and make judgments on what's available, and then ourselves have an opportunity. And we're kind of in the golden era ourselves of having exposure to these terrific teas. Now, you've heard me say the word pu'er about 8,000 times already, and you're thinking to yourself, didn't he say we were going to do a white tea today? And this would be a good thought to have. And it did just cross my mind. I haven't said white tea more than 3 or 4 times. So therefore, the rest of this discussion is about white tea. So what makes white tea white? Less processing, less oxidation, and in Yunnan, sun drying. So uniformly, if we're getting white tea, that is, Tea Master and I are getting white tea, it's sun dried. And so that gives a different feel. Zhenghe white tea is sun dried, but not every white tea is. Some of the Fuding is sun dried, but a lot is machine baked. So there's a different quality, both flavor wise and sometimes even appearance-wise. Are the varietals that they're using in Yunnan the same as they're using in Zhenghe and Fujian or Jinyang? The answer would be obviously not, because they're using old tree in Yunnan, particularly in the Sichuan-Bana area. Occasionally they'll use old bush. Occasionally they'll use ancient tree. What drives a farmer to make that sort of selection? Every farming area has some farmers who are creative, and they're trying to expand their repertoire. They learn from other farmers, they go visiting other farmers, and then they decide to take that step. And usually taking that step is a 2 to 3 year process, because the first year, just like anything we do the first time, is it going to be a complete success? Normally not unless some bolt of lightning and accidental confluence of a bunch of good factors happens. That's rare, very rare in the tea business. There's so many things, so many ways you can go wrong as you're producing, even though on the surface for white tea, it sounds easy. You pick, that's pretty easy. Hey, and we're in Yunnan, so that means we don't have to pick so uniform. We can kind of just sloppy pick. We can have some branches in there. Not branches, stems. We have stems in there. That's easy. Sounds really easy. Okay. We sun dry. Let's see, where's the sun? Oh, sun's over there. Okay, just get that out there in the sun. It's great. This is so easy. Yes.
Do farmers have a backup system for when the sunshine fails them? Like, do farmers who typically sun dry also try to have baking systems or borrow the baking system of a neighboring farm, or if that's even in life possible?
It is. That's a great question. So the question has to do with if you're married to sun drying, and this answer actually applies anywhere, including Zhenghe, Fujian, if they are sun drying. You better have backup facilities, and particularly in Sichuan-Bana, because it is very humid. It is foggy quite a bit of the time, and it does rain a lot. And so if it's in a wet period, although typically during the spring when they're doing this, it should be drier, but should be isn't always is, right? And as global warming and weather change occurs, more and more of these anomalies are occurring. And so the answer is yes, there is always a backup system in place, because they know at any moment they could be surprised. So when the farmer's thinking of doing something like this, and we just got to the step of sun drying, and a great question of, well, where's your backup system? The farmer is unused to handling white tea. They may not have prepared as carefully a backup system, although most farmers do have some ability to bake rather than to sun dry. So that's part of the backup system. And most of the farmers do have indoor facilities to store in case it's exceptionally foggy, dewy, or rainy. So we've gotten through the pick, and we've gotten through, we're going to wither now. And so far it sounded really easy, but here's the very first place that all sorts of problems can occur. All right, I'm withering. How far am I supposed to wither? Well, my friend in Yunnan Province said, I gotta wither till it's about 50%. Now I'm that old-fashioned farmer. 50%. Okay, I'm gonna take a guess. So that's one issue right there. There's not that body of experience which exists in Yunnan, not the same body of experience that exists in Fujian. So that's one of the reasons that the farmers have to go through experimentation. Go and visit Fujian, talk to agricultural scientists to get some sense of how to make judgments. So after you wither, then what do? Oh, you mean you have to wither day after day? God, that's inconvenient. And wait a minute, I'm picking every day and more stuff is coming in. I gotta have real space. So these are the considerations. And let's say you've conquered all of those considerations. Now you have to make a judgment. Once you've completed, you believe you've completed, got the moisture down to 5 or 6%, maybe a little lower, maybe slightly higher. You're thinking to yourself, yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm really good. Well, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Because taste is going to be important, isn't it? So if you've done all this stuff and say your ratio of stems and your ratio of buds isn't what they would normally have in a peony grape, for example, and you brew this thing up, oh, it tastes different. Well, we're going to call this Yunnan Beauty. We're going to put this on the market, Yunnan Beauty. Now, white tea consumers, if they're used to white tea, maybe they're thinking, huh, Yunnan Beauty. What's so beautiful about this again? So that's part of the entire experience. You got to understand the range of what is out there as outstanding white tea. You got to figure out where you want to be within that range. And then you actually have to make it to get in that range. So those are the challenges that the farmers in Yunnan who aren't used to doing white tea face. And remember, they would face ridicule if they didn't do a good job. Unlike, say, farmers in Tanzania. Farmer in Tanzania communicates with farmers or scientists in China and says, hey, I understand this particular varietal that does white tea in Yunnan Province grows real fast, and you can pick it and use it as green or white. And so any result that they have is usually for the local market. Does it matter the same way as for a Yunnanese farmer? And the answer, it doesn't. Because in Tanzania, their standards for tea aren't at that exalted standard that they are in China. And tea knowledge isn't as pervasive as it is in China. And that's why you hear and see on the market, India, oh yeah, I'm growing white tea. Yeah, as if you can grow white tea. I'm growing tea and making it using the white tea methodology. Almost no one outside of China knows how to really do a full-scale white tea methodology. And that's why you get so many interesting renditions of white tea. So speaking of renditions and interesting and so forth, you know, I'm feeling slightly unsoothed. Maybe that's because the tea master's eyes are on me, indicating that she's thirsty, which means that I should be cognizant of the fact you're probably thirsty. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to bring up the numinous, the beautiful, the dazzling, oh wait, dazzling, not green, but yes, the tea master.
Tea master. Hey everyone. Yeah, good morning. So we do, the white tea. This white tea is introduced, from the Yunnan. And then I teach it myself. Yeah. So we still, it's really But I love a lot white tea. So. John, help me.
Yes. So she lays out her tableau. And the tableau is, she's using 3 cups, and that's to cool the water down more quickly. 2 cups is fine with a strainer. That will do. First step is to put any water temperature between 175 and 212. Make sure that everything is completely clean and that all the cups have no soap stains or aroma anomalies. So she's aiming to be at 170 degrees for this. And if it's slightly cooler, that's okay.
And this process will also aerate the water and reduce the steam, right, as well as getting the temperature down.
That's exactly right. Water aeration is important. Reducing the steam, dissipating the steam is very important. You get a brighter flavor when you do that. You notice there's a rhythm to this. Can you be thinking of some credit card bill you didn't pay when you're doing stuff like this? And the answer is no, not unless you want water all over the darn place. No, not that one. It's soothing, yes. Now, the tea master was just testing me to see whether I was paying attention and being really present. And so she was present. She did that on purpose.
来有该死是我替没打了对，soothing.
And so you know she's going to pour the water back into the kettle with the spigot so that she can control the pour. So she pours the water on the side of the cup. You see some things right away. So remembering that you would usually characterize this as peony grade. And by peony grade, we all know from the white tea discussions we've had before that that means there's some buds in there, there's leaves in there, usually picked down to the 2nd or 3rd leaf. So you get this beautiful set of leaves, and take a close look when you start to brew this thing. They're green, they're yellowish, they're brownish. It is truly remarkable. And this tells you right away, A, this is not your prototypical white tea, but this one is still done in such a style that it doesn't lead you to believe, oh, they messed this up. Nope. Once you taste this, and actually you should already be able to tell something from the aroma. I catch big aroma coming off of this right away. The size of these leaves is enormous. The particular varietals that they use in Zhenghe are large. These are even larger than those. So you get that sense of a difference. And that's important to know because wherever you do any style of tea, doesn't matter the variety, the local terroir is going to be the biggest influencer on what the end result is. The second largest influencer is the farmer themselves. And realizing that this particular farmer doesn't have 40 or 50 years of experience with doing white tea, there's going to be that factor. Although, in this particular case, this farmer has 40 years of experience with tea itself and has done both red tea and pu'er tea. So there's great experience in understanding their leaves. Yes.
Do we know what inspired this farmer to make this batch of leaves into white tea?
Great question. So why in the world would this farmer who's already famous for doing the pu'er and occasionally the red tea, why would this farmer wake up one morning and say, you know what? I've had enough of red and black. Let's do a little white stuff. No, that's not what happened. What happened partially is us, because we actually showed this farmer otherworldly. And I think that got him to thinking, you know what? That's interesting. He didn't tell us he was going to do this, but he went ahead and did this. So these farmers are influenced by each other. They're influenced by trends that they're seeing within the tea world. They're encouraged, actually, many times by the scientists themselves to think big, to think expansively. And because there's so much more knowledge out there than there was 40 or 50 years ago, there's real knowledge and real ability to do experimentation and end up with wonderful results like this. So you see this on a smaller scale. When you go to farms in, say, southern Yunnan Province, they're producing certain types of oolong tea. The farmers, especially the young farmers, are constantly traveling and talking to older farmers. They're constantly talking with younger scientist friends and trying to figure out, what should I be doing different? What can I do different? How, if I tweak it a little bit, will I get, what sort of result will I get? What's the difference between this farmer and those farmers? This farmer has this broad experience and has come to a stage in his life where he's basically said, you know what? I want to see what I can do in other realms. It's almost like a world famous artist who suddenly says, I'm not going to oil paint today. Instead, I'm going to do some other kind of drawing today. And it's almost 100% likely that what they produce will be interesting. It may not become the next best drawing in the world that's ever been done. That's not the point. The point is that the person is so steeped in how to understand the environment around them, and they have an eye of looking at things and creating things that leaves us, wow, that's interesting. Whether it reaches the Da Vinci level, that's not the point. The point is they're doing something interesting. Is this tea quantitatively, if it were entered into a contest of white tea in China, might it win the top award? Probably not. However, as you're going to see in a minute, is this tea interesting? Has it earned a spot on Sophie's board? And indeed, it has earned a spot, and earning a spot is not an accident. Have to have lots of experience, have to have really, really good material in order to get a spot. All right, we should. Yes, yeah. The 4 minutes has expired. Now, as it turns out, in a minute, I'm going to have to say something you don't want to hear. In fact, I'm going to have to utter the 2 most scary words in the English language. And those are understudy error. I set the timer for 4 minutes, but I didn't actually press the button. but I knew 4 minutes was coming because I was counting in my head. But yours will look very close to this. And you'll note how deep that color is. And you'll note the huge smell of the aroma of this. Take good notes on this because we're going to do another white next week called Headliner. All right, let's enter the quality arena. This is 170 degrees, so you can take a larger sip. There is astringency. For me, mid-tongue, rough of the mouth. Nice aftertaste, cooling. Energetics, I'm working on it. Taking the second sip. Wow. I confirm all those things and add huge flavor. A lot of aroma, a lot of stuff going on with this. I'm feeling warmed up. Not all of you are going to feel warmed up, but I'm certainly feeling warmed up. Proof of the ancientness of this, of the tea leaves. So this turns you on to a white tea, and you understand from drinking this why this belongs on Sophie's board. And you understand why, as farmers experiment, new and interesting, very interesting things come to light. And this is one of them. So we've had a chance to talk about that today. I hope you've taken good notes, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week when we'll do another Yunnan white tea from roughly the same area. It's certainly from southern Yunnan, not so far away from the Burmese border, called Headliner. Your responsibilities this week, the same as ours. Keep healthy, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.
Take care.